Okay, good morning, everyone. The Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District will come to order at 9:06 a.m. If the clerk could please call the roll to establish a quorum.
Carr, Daniels, Frost, Gaylord,
Here.
Guerra,
Here.
Hanson, Harris, Kennedy, Lamson, Lee,
Here.
Natoli, Peters, Cerna,
Here.
Perry.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much, and I believe Board Member Natoli and Board Member Frost shall be coming down shortly. If everyone could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. If the clerk could please read the board announcements for those watching online.
This meeting of the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District is cablecast live without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse cable system. This meeting is being closed captioned and will be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will be repeated on Saturday, February 29th and Sunday, March 1st at 2 p.m. on Channel 14. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker form located on the table at the back of the chambers and give it to the clerk. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Also, at this time, please silence your cell phones until the conclusion of today's meeting.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I'm going to, let's go to the first item. We have the consent calendar here. And I'll just ask my colleagues for a motion on the consent calendar unless it's been moved, properly moved and seconded by Board Member Terry and then seconded by Board Member Hanson. Any discussion? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, anyone signed up to speak on the consent calendar?
No.
Okay, with that, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Measure passes. Okay, Madam Clerk, the next item.
The next item on the calendar is the discussion calendar, Community Air Protection Incentive Grants over $1 million, and I have Alberto Ayala giving a presentation. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, this whole thing.
All right, we're on.
All right, there we go.
Now we just need a slide.
Give me 1 second. There.
Okay, here we go. Thank you. Good morning, Board. What we want to do is share with you briefly an example of some of the projects that we are putting in place in the region. We are having a lot of discussions about how as an air district, we can leverage local dollars against state funding. And we are making progress, but still have a long way to go, because I also often get the question, what does the air district do? What do we do beyond air monitoring? So my hope is to give you a little bit of information, a little bit of sense in terms of some of these transformational projects that fit right into many discussions that we're having regionally under various initiatives, obviously including Measure A. After my brief remarks, we've invited representatives from the entities that are working with us, our partners in these projects. They are going to address you directly, and the point there is, again, that you hear from them directly what this is doing, what this means, how we work with them as an air district. This is funding that comes from the state's cap and trade program. And this is channeled through the state, the Air Resources Board, the agency that is handling the funding for this new program called Community Air Protection, AB 617. You've heard us talk a lot about that. One of the most important elements of 617 is, again, the availability of cap and trade funding that can be directly put to work in helping our most needed communities. not only get emission reductions, which is really what 617 is all about, but beyond that, that we can be smart about how we invest in this future mobility and future technology that is really going to get us to carbon zero and clean air and sustainability. So what we've done here is, and we do need your action, but what we've done here is highlighted 2 projects that came through our open solicitation for AB 617 funding last year. The first one is the deployment of more than 20 zero-emission heavy-duty trucks. We hope they will be Tesla trucks, but they're not the only ones in the market. We do show the Tesla technology here because, again, that is what the recipient has identified at this point that is going to be of interest to them. But again, you have other technology providers bringing zero-emission heavy-duty trucks to the marketplace. And you can see that it's a sizable amount. We're going to give them more than $4 million out of the 617 pot of money. So we can bring more than 20 zero-emission trucks to one of our most needed areas in Sacramento, and that is South Sacramento. In addition to the trucks, we're also going to help them deploy infrastructure, charging infrastructure, because obviously you need to have specialized technology to be able to charge these facilities. So that is the first project. So again, this gets to the question of, when we talk about leveraging local dollars, what do we do? These are the types of projects that we can do and we need to do for the region. This is one example of a partnership, public-private partnership, a government entity like an air district working with a major corporation like Pepsi that is very much part of the fabric of our region. The second project I want to highlight for you is, again, one of our probably most successful partnerships, and it's a growing partnership. And this is with Sacramento RT. We are helping them, to the extent that we can, deploy zero-emission transit technology, not only so they can meet the new state requirements, but beyond that, so that we can get to innovative transit and better mobility services for the region. And I think we all agree that Sacramento RT is doing a great job. This year, we are adding more than $1 million so we can help them deploy the needed charging infrastructure that they need to use to support the microtransit EVs that are coming to these different cities. And again, I want to highlight for you, one of the questions we get is, where are the projects outside of Sacramento? You can see that the technology is not only being deployed in the city of Sacramento, but also Citrus Heights and Rancho Cordova. So again, my hope is when you go back to your councils and your day jobs, that now you have an example of what we as an air district, what you as our directors are telling us that is a priority for the region. This funding stream for technology for Sacramento RT for charging infrastructure is above and beyond what we've already given them last year for actual EV transit buses. You may recall that we brought before you $2 million request from Sacramento RT so they can get 20 microtransit shuttles. So I'm going to stop there. Again, we have speakers signed up. You're going to hear directly from them about these projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ayala. Let's begin with those who've signed up to speak. Madam Clerk.
So the first person signed to speak is Keshav Sandhi with Pepsi Company.
Good morning. And Bodo, thank you for the introduction. I'm Keshav Sandhi. I'm with a company called Pepsi, and I carry my own water because we make delicious drinks and beverages. So thank you for having us today over here. Good morning again, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the board. As I said, I'm Keshav Sandhi. I lead the Fleet Engineering and Sustainability Group at PepsiCo. Today it's truly our honor to be standing here next to our partners over here, the Air District. We're honored to announce that we would like to implement zero-emission battery electric Tesla tractors at our Sacramento bottling plant. Our intent is to implement 20 of these tractors in the next year and a half. Again, these 20 tractors, they will be domiciled at our Sacramento facility, but they'll be driving throughout the region, page 9 of the slide deck that we just, it might be on your desks over there, shows exactly where these will be driving. So while the domicile site is in Sacramento, these drive through the region. The 20 trucks will be replacing 20 traditional diesel trucks that are currently operating at other sites in California. In addition to the trucks, we'll also be implementing high-power charging for these trucks. When we're moving to this new mobility, it's not just about the trucks, it's also about charging and the power required for charging. So in addition to the trucks, there'll be that high-power charging that will be implemented at the site. Pepsico, as you know, is a CPG company involved in the production and delivery of convenient foods and beverages. We are an integral part of almost every community. Just in the state of California, we employ 10,000 team members. Our Sacramento site, the bottling site where these tractors will be implemented, has 460 full-time team members. These advanced technologies, the trucks and the chargers, will create meaningful opportunities for a diverse and inclusive workforce and help them gain new skills and trainings. Our mission as a company is to create more smiles with every sip and every bite of our product. That's our mantra. With every sip and every bite, we'd like to create more smiles. Our mission, while we are a global company, our mission is to win locally in a globally enabled world. So local deployment of products and projects like this is of keen interest to us. We aim to leverage our reach and expertise. We do understand we have a reach and we have the expertise. This is probably not the first time that we're doing non-traditional deployment of vehicles. We do have that reach and that expertise. Would like to take advantage of that and build a more sustainable food ecosystem. And that's one of these deployments I'd like to do over here. Again, scale is something that we bring. We also know that scale brings the responsibility. And because of our scale, we think we can help provide transformational impacts in areas of agriculture, water, packaging, products, climate, and people. All things that matter to communities here, the state, and possibly globally. We're again proud to partner with the Air District in this initiative. This initiative with the Air District will help us deploy vehicles in the Sacramento area at a much larger scale than what we could have done ourselves, and at a much expedited timeline. We could have possibly done a few trucks, but this is transformational. Taking 20 trucks out of service and bringing transformational technologies, that scale. It has not been done in the beverage delivery business before. So partnerships like this, what we have with the Air District, will help with this large-scale deployment. And not only is it going to be for us, but if it's corporations like us bringing these vehicles, leveraging their learnings, there could be more commercial entities who would like to utilize more of these vehicles in the future, thereby catalyzing the market. PepsiCo has a track record, as I mentioned, about fleet sustainability, and we have done measures like this in the past. But an overarching strategy within the corporation, we do have an overarching sustainability strategy which says we will reduce our greenhouse gas impact 20% absolute by the year 2020. So programs like these will assist us in reaching that goal. And in order to reach that goal, Sacramento is one of many sites across the country. We're trying to figure out where we could deploy zero-emission technologies just like this one. The Air District, and along with SMUD, have been great partners. We're calling this program STEP. It's the next step for us. Sacramento Transformative Electrification Program. So it's the next step for us, moving from traditional vehicles to an electrified program.
And we generally don't get a lot of speakers here, so we don't have a clock on. But we do have a board member who want to talk. So when you're If
Sure.
you can conclude with your
I'll end with one statement. As a company and as a corporation, we aspire to be faster, stronger, and better. That's our aspiration. We'd like to be faster, stronger, and better. The partnerships that we have with Air District over here will help us catalyze and enable a faster transformation to emerging technologies, yielding cleaner and better transportation solutions, not only across Sacramento, the valley, the state, and possibly a template for global deployment of technologies like this. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, and I do appreciate the public-private partnership, particularly in an area that doesn't get a lot of attention, which is the heavy-duty tractors. I've got a couple board members here signed up to speak, so don't move. They may be asking you some questions here. Board Member Cerna.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So first, let me say thank you and congratulations. This is very exciting to see a major corporation express its willingness to be cutting edge and be a maverick of sorts, and to do it here in our local community with your deployment of these Tesla zero-emission freight vehicles. And as a member of the California Air Resources Board, I'm hopeful that you're at least going to share with us, not necessarily in presentation form, but share with the California equivalent of this board what you're doing, because I think it's important for us at the state to understand where commerce is beginning to find it feasible and reasonable to deploy these types of vehicles. I guess I have a question about the proprietary nature of Tesla. So I understand the choices are very limited at this early stage in terms of what you have to choose from in terms of zero-emission electric propulsion freight vehicles. But is there any opportunity whatsoever for the charging infrastructure that would be used for these vehicles to be shared with other local deployments of zero-emission heavy-duty vehicles? For instance, regional transit, our local transit district here, we're on a trajectory to deploy a number of electric buses in the near future. In one of the things that, of course, we have to take under consideration is the cost and logistics of the infrastructure necessary to keep those buses charged. But is there any kind of economy of scale here or ability to continue this private-public partnership with other agencies that have a similar interest in the deployment of zero-emission heavy-duty vehicles, such that we might be able to share some of the charging ability, at least early on?
So this charging infrastructure will be behind the fence. It'll be on a property. Mm-hmm. But in addition to that, we're also optimizing in order to reduce the cost of the charging infrastructure itself. We're optimizing based upon the dwell time available for the trucks when the trucks will be on our site. So the availability of those chargers to charge other vehicles or entities might not be there. That's part of the optimization algorithm, trying to understand what is the size of this charging, minimize the cost, make it available for our vehicles when out on site.
I guess what I'm asking is that even if it's not the charging units themselves, and whether it's behind a fence or not, that to me is that's not a barrier, so to speak, to the ability to work that kind of logistic part of it out. But I assume that you have to, for instance, run different electrical conduit, massive conduit, underground to get to those charging stations. Is there an ability to split off some of the electrons that would flow through that part of the system to maybe a different site with different chargers that could be used by other vehicles, other agencies, public entities such as regional transit?
So based upon the scope and size, SMUD will be dropping a separate service just for these vehicles on our property. Mm-hmm. But SMUD can do something similar for other entities as well. So this will be a service being dedicated to these vehicles from SMUD coming on our side.
I see our
I was going to interject and say we actually have a SMOD in the room. They're going to testify as well, and our partners at Sacramento RT, who perhaps can also address your question. It makes sense, but I think it is a SMOD kind of question in terms of deploying. And we're
Yeah.
deploying more infrastructure. This is not the only.
No, what inspires my line of questioning, it should be somewhat obvious, is that, everything's, new in terms of this space and in terms of especially heavy-duty electric propulsion vehicles. And so everyone's going to be learning kind of on the same learning curve, and I'm just I want to at least exhaust the question or the idea about prospects of sharing infrastructure, if SMUD is going to be running their system or changing their system like this to one property. Does it make sense to, for instance, do the same to an adjoining property, or if on the existing property, is there an opportunity to do a carve out for, to make it least cost for everyone, and perhaps there's a leasing opportunity with regard to the property where the charging occurs, all those things.
So for our application, SMUD, and that's SMUD might answer more than us. I don't think there are any substation upgrades planned for this. They have enough capacity. They'll just tap into existing capacity and provide that to our site. If they had to do more substation upgrades, then yes, that could be carved out and shared amongst other users as well. In this case, they're just tapping into existing service, giving us another drop point.
Supervisor Cerna, if I could also request here, maybe if SMUD and our air pollution control officer can get back to us on, is the substation capabilities capable of that? I mean, I know we have older parts of the industrial area that need new substations just because of the growth, but I think there's a fair point there.
Yeah, sorry. It is a fair point, and one of the topics, many of you are aware that we regularly meet the four agencies, Sacramento RT, SMAT, SACO, and us. And one of the topics that we're discussing, I think what you guys are asking, it's a great question, is what is the plan to deploy charging infrastructure and fueling infrastructure for the region? Because we're all trying to do a little bit, and we need to make sure that we do it in a coordinated fashion, and that it's also optimized to get to the questions that Supervisor Cerna is doing. So perhaps it is work in progress, but that would be a great topic to bring back to this board.
Great. Thanks. Congratulations again. I do look forward to hearing, though, from SMUD a response to some of my questions. So, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cerna. Board Member Harris.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Ayala, is this a cost share agreement or just a capital investment with Pepsico?
It's an incentive, so it's a cost share. We're not paying for the full cost of the project, so it's one of our clean technology incentives.
So can you give me an idea of PepsiCo's investment in this project?
So we'll be investing close to $2 million in this project.
Okay. I am a Tesla owner. I've owned a few electric vehicles, and I'm not sure if it applies to the tractor space, but certainly in the automotive space, Tesla charging technology is well advanced of other standards like CHAdeMO CCS. In other words, you can put more electrons into a battery more quickly with Tesla technology than other charging standards, and that's definitely true in the automotive space. Do you have any knowledge that the same is true in heavy-duty vehicles like this?
So in this application, because we have the dwell time of 10 plus hours, we're actually slowing down the charging. That will mitigate the need for SMUD to upgrade their services. So we're utilizing existing services that they have so that we can slow down that charging. Versus if we had to charge at a faster rate, we might have to do service upgrades. But each tractor will have its own charger, and we can manage that charging. So reduce the impact
point
of the
I'm
grid.
trying to make is, as you look at procuring Tesla trucks, is that a factor in the decision? Because for me, again, it was definitely a big decision in my purchase of the automobile.
Absolutely. So this includes both delivery and transport tractors. Transport tractors are the ones that drive about 350 miles a day, nonstop drop and hook operation. Those, yes, Tesla battery and the throughput charge rate will be required. No other OEMs are providing that throughput rate. For the delivery tractors, which are local delivery, stop and go, we probably don't need that high power charging rate. We can do with about 100 kilowatt charging rate. The transport, which is drop and hook, drives about 350 miles, drops a trailer, picks up a new trailer. Those have about 40 minutes to charge. That's where we'll need the high throughput of charging. So we can modulate based upon application how much charging goes and what throughput is required.
Yeah, understood. Okay, well, that answers my questions. I wish you luck with the project, and I'd love to come down and see these Tesla trucks.
Thank you. We're excited.
Thank you, Board Member Harris. Board Member Natoli.
Yes, just to follow on to the line of questioning from Member Cerna. In that general area, this isn't the only industry. Pepsi's had a strong presence there since going back to the 70s. But you have right across the street, you have Elk Grove Unified School District has their business operations center there. Most of their buses aren't there, but they have a food service facility. Across the street, formerly Kreis Fiber, Chinet industry. You've got Siemens around the corner. A number of other, industries that either make products and operate as a hub out of those sites. So this, to the point about the charging stations, granted it's going to be behind the fence, and that's for internal security and so forth. But I guess as we're looking to this, recognizing that activity, and it's largely in Supervisor Kennedy's district, but in that general vicinity out there, that the opportunities, have we done any outreach either through the Air District and or obviously those are your partners in the business community, and I don't know what contact Pepsico has with your neighbors across the street or up the road on Reese Road and so forth. But I think it's important that if we're going to be bringing infrastructure and they're asking a grant of $2.3 million to just serve this particular site, if there's opportunity for users that might not have the same level of opportunity for investment in their fleet to have some partners with again, assuming arrangements can be made for security and movement on site and so forth, it makes good sense to me. And again, it's not just for SMUD. I think it's Air District and certainly Pepsico as one of our corporate leaders here in the business community. But there's a lot of opportunities out there potentially. Again, when you look at the firms, big and small, and many of them obviously don't scale up to the size of PepsiCo, which is international. But I think that we ought to, really key in on that, particularly if we're going to make that level of investment and a grant through the district.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Great, thank you very much, Board Member.
I'd like to have
Oh,
staff
you
respond.
did you
Yeah,
want a
maybe
question?
Jaime or
I don't know if that was in the frame of a question. So.
it was like a follow-on. Yes, yeah, it was.
Morning. My name is Jaime Lemos. I oversee the Transportation and Climate Change Division, and that's a great question, and this is something that we are looking into. We do reach out to that specific community because there is a lot of industrial, the industrial sectors there. There's a lot of step van opportunity there. There's Elk Grove Unified School District. And so, for instance, Elk Grove Unified is also a participant, and we will continue to invest in the Elk Grove district or fleet transportation office there. But more so, also looking at potential for infrastructure charging hubs where people can learn from the technology. We know that a big challenge is for someone that may be smaller than Pepsi to invest into the vehicle and the charging as well. So we're working with our partners in SMUD and SAC-RT to see if we can do some multimodal infrastructure hubs where maybe different partners can take advantage of the charging. So this is all innovative ideas, and so we're trying to make our way to see if we can do really deploy some of these. I know that Brent is here from SAC-RT as well, and we've had preliminary discussions about even some of the TOD areas that could serve as infrastructure hubs, like for these for a lot of the mobility opportunities.
If I could, Mr. Chair, just a quick follow-on. So I guess what maybe as a precursor to what may come, this is a significant investment certainly by, PepsiCo, but if the agreement for the grant would not preclude the opportunity, and I'm going to give you a real quick example here of where over the years, from a land use perspective, shopping centers would not provide the cross-access agreements because, competitive and liability and so forth. And so you get shopping centers with multiple driveways onto major thoroughfares, which can, have its own clogging effect. And, over time, local governments have gotten smarter about that, and that's a prerequisite. Big or small shopping center, you're going to have to provide for cross-access so that people don't have to go out to the street to get to the next business or to the next service that they want to go to. Here, I would think that the agreement maybe ought to have an opportunity and a clause that would not preclude, again, recognizing that it's their property and they control their own access. But if you're getting public dollars to match the private investment here, and these are scarce dollars, no matter what may be available through cap and trade and so forth, I think that there ought to be some opportunity. And again, as a leader, and obviously having you here this morning is very important, that we look at that. The agreement doesn't preclude the opportunity if somebody has that drop, and it may not be the designated hub now, but we have the opportunity to work with other users in that general geographical vicinity to have the opportunity, maybe use the charging stations for some of their fleet as they bring, like vehicles on in the marketplace. So,
Yeah, Dr. Ayala.
These are very good questions, and we can certainly bring back more perspective on this particular topic. Our chair has requested that we come back later, mid-year, and talk about some of a broad discussion in terms of the mobility projects that we're working on for the region. We can certainly bring back this particular topic. But what I want to remind Supervisor Natoli of is these are all great points, but these are state dollars, and they come with fairly strict guidelines that we need to meet. So, we have a sandbox, and some of the things that you're suggesting, we just need to make sure that we can play within the sandbox they give us.
So here's what I'd like to see if we can do. Maybe we can't answer that question right now. We do still have 4 other people signed up to speak.
Yep.
Whichever of our staff or council who is the most familiar with the verse and line of the agreements, can you see and verify if there's an answer to Board Member Natoli while we get through the public discussion and other questions? Is that okay, Dr. Ayala?
Sure.
Do you think we can try that? If we can't verify that today, that's fine, but I think Dr. Natoli makes a good point about that. Let me go on to Board Member Gaylord here.
not a doctor. No, I'm not a doctor.
Yeah. Some people would say you have a PhD in humanity here. So.
He is the dean of the board, though.
That's right. The dean of the board. Board Member in Gaylord. That's right.
Good morning, and thank you.
Good morning.
So I'm extremely happy that the initial focus is on the Tesla product. I'm a huge advocate of what they're doing in the industry and the infrastructure. I'm just a little curious, is the relationship, so the PepsiCo Air Board relationship is solidified, but in choosing the Tesla as the technological partner, is there a relationship between the 3 entities outside of just a purchase for the infrastructure and trucks themselves?
So, we do have 100 Teslas on order. So we're one of the first companies to place an order for 100 Tesla Class 8 tractors. And part of this program, before the grant applications, we actually issued an RFP. And we had all the major OEMs who are building Class 8 vehicles, we asked them to bid on it. The successful applicant was Tesla for this application. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, just in general, for this purpose and future expansion, I think that it's just a smart choice. So, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to bring up call the next member of the public who signed up to speak. And Madam Clerk, if you can call that name up.
I have Brent Brinegar here with SAC-RT.
Fantastic. And as Brett comes up, I just want to comment that this is, without a company the size of PepsiCo, as was mentioned earlier, we probably couldn't get to this point of an acceleration rate to heavy-duty vehicles, which also underscores the need for. I know there's a lot of work with this agency and others and SMUD on the mobility center, which one of the greatest needs is the industrial area for heavy duty, and they're looking at how do we service that corridor there. So, well, thank you very much.
Okay. Good morning, Director Guerrera, members of the board. My name is Brent Brinegar. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for SAC-RT, and I want to first thank you for having this opportunity for this award. We were very appreciative of this. This award means a lot to us because we are a transit leader in looking for ways to improve air quality. We do that 2 ways. We look for low emission vehicles, and we also look for finding increased ridership. We've been doing a really good job in this area. We've increased our ridership over 5% just recently, and by doing that, we're improving air quality. This grant is actually allowing us to complete our third phase of our electrification charging. This is going to allow us to charge up to 40 buses, and these buses will serve in the communities of Citrus Heights, the city of Sacramento, and disadvantaged communities. Some details on this infrastructure: it will allow us to charge, we'll have 20 charging stations that are 150 kilowatt, 480 volt charging. The charging will be done underneath our freeway next to the admin building. What's nice about that from a location standpoint is we're able to dispatch operators from that location and do the repairs and maintenance right next door. The charging for each bus takes about a little over 3 hours, so typically those will be done during the nighttime. We see some great opportunities, and we look forward to doing some more projects with the air quality. This has been a great partnership. We have, as you know, we have a fleet of 200 buses, and we'll be looking to find more infrastructure for either any kind of zero-emission buses that we can find. The other thing I wanted to bring up was just this has been a great opportunity. The funding that we received is close to $1.2 million. We actually were able to match that money with about close to $600,000 of other local match. So this is a really positive thing that we were able to do. And then as it relates to Director Cerna's question about how do we find ways to take this technology and allow others to leverage it, the charging that we do have right now has credit card access, so we have a mechanism for doing that. The question always is going to be looking at the legal rights for how allowing people to enter in the property, making sure it's done in a safe and convenient way, and that we have, if we're doing the charging at night and there's some daytime activity where we can allow others to come in, that's what we'll look at. So I think these are great questions that we're going to start researching.
If I could
Board Member
interrupt.
Cerna, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I understand kind of the need to have distinct areas for charging different types of vehicles, whether they be commercial or public vehicles. I would just encourage us to think as creatively as we can, and there's plenty of precedent for how it's done, for instance, in Emeryville with AC Transit, where I went to go visit their hydrogen fuel cell filling station, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years ago, where literally on one side of a cinder block wall you have the yard for AC Transit rolling stock, and on the other side it's a public access pull-in off the street for personal use hydrogen cell vehicles like the Toyota Mirai. So if I'm driving a Mirai, I could actually use the hydrogen that's flowing from the other side of the wall that is managed by AC Transit. So it can be done.
Yes.
That should not be a limiting factor as we move forward. So I just want to share that.
Yeah, I think to Board Member Cerna's point, if the goal here is accelerating the rate to scale in electrification or other zero-emission technologies, at this point in the stage, we should be looking at those challenges.
We agree. I think actually at the initial onset of this project, there was, if you think of the admin campus, it's between 30th and 29th Street. As on 29th Street, across the street from O, we actually considered maybe a potential pull-out where residents are just personal use charging could be done, and that would be on the other side of where these chargers are for bus purposes. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we are looking at that, and that's something that we're not going to shy away from. I think right now we're looking to just get some of these buses charged initially, kind of get some history behind us, and then start moving towards this larger partnership. So I just want to thank you for this opportunity.
Great, thank you very much.
Yep.
Madam Clerk?
The next speaker is Dwight McCurdy with SMUD.
SMUD's been your name's been thrown around quite a bit, so.
Good morning, board members. We're pleased to be here today to support both these projects, in fact, but primarily for the Pepsi project. I'm here today with Marie Brome, who's the strategic account advisor for the Pepsi project in Sacramento. We've been working with Pepsi for perhaps up to a year on this project, and we're very pleased about it. SMUD is going to support it financially and providing power, You're probably all aware that SMUD adopted a new integrated resource plan in December of 2018. It provides for net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2040 from SMUD. A large part of that is transportation electrification. That speaks to many of your questions that you've been raising today. SMUD is going to be rolling out many programs in support of the transportation electrification in order to achieve our targets. And this is just the beginning. But this is a great step into the fleet and the medium and heavy duty area, which is probably about 10 years behind the light duty area. But this is a great step forward into the commercial area. And it will basically set the stage for others to be aware of that this technology is now reaching into the fleet area and medium and heavy duty. And so we're very pleased about that. I can answer some of your questions, but we would be happy also to engage in a fuller discussion at a later date with the AQMD. We've been working closely with the AQMD staff on this project and are very supportive, and the Pepsi staff, and we're very pleased about it. A couple of quick answers to one of your questions. Their DC fast charging for their transport trucks will be somewhere perhaps in the 700 to 1,000 kilowatt range, compared to the 100 kilowatt range for their delivery trucks. So it might be up to 10 times faster. We don't know yet. Tesla, I don't think, has announced its final DC fast charger rate, but it's going to be significantly higher for the transport trucks that need to move freight for much longer distances. And SMUD is very supportive of that. The Society of Automotive Engineers today is working on DC fast charging up to 350 kilowatts. You may be aware that Electrify America has been putting DC charging stations out there that range from 50 kilowatts up to 175 kilowatts, but SAE is working on 350 kilowatts. That's where the industry is going. And of course, that has big implications for electric utilities. We're very aware of it, and we're anticipating how we're going to be serving those large loads. Of course, we're also very supportive of the RT electric transit bus activities and trolleys. We work closely with RT on the project down at 29th and O, and we'll continue to work with them to support their projects and provide power. In the case of Pepsi and many other industries that we're looking at, each case is site-specific, and we do try to optimize for them. It just so happens that we have enough power to meet their needs from our existing cubicles, our power cubicles that we have down there. We're also working with the school districts. We've worked with Elk Grove Unified School District. We're also looking at the other industries, Bimbo, Bakery, Mission, Linen, that whole intersection of Reese and Gerber Roads is a prime area for further development for electrification. We're very interested in that. Marie, in fact, has several of the businesses that operate down there. So we're very supportive of that. Now, if you have any other specific questions, I'd be happy to tackle a few.
Great. Well, thank you. I think SMUD is another example of a great local government entity that is providing low rates and been in the business also of economic development. As we also work on adoption, I'm looking forward to the opportunity of where we actually do manufacturing and job growth through these efforts. But I, as a local government, I hope we can answer Board Member Natoli's question about how we've learned over the years of how to make sure that we have that the agreements that we put together are not exclusive. So and after our last public speaker, maybe Dr. Ayala, if you can respond to that.
Mr.
Okay.
Lemos is going to address it.
Good. Madam Clerk.
I could add a couple of things for you. SMUD is providing over $1 million for the Cal EVIP statewide program that launched in Sacramento that provides for public charging. We're also, of course, collaborating with Electrify America at the 16 current locations where they have public DC fast charging available. So SMUD has a wide cross-section of programs aimed at public and private sector initiatives.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much.
Ms. McCarty was the last speaker.
Oh, that was our last speaker. Okay, then. Yes, Mr. Limas.
Director Natoli, this has been an issue that we've been throwing around with SMUD and SAC-RT on how best to learn from the infrastructure sector when we deploy EVSC, both for light duty and heavy duty. So we will look into our contracts to make sure that there's no language that precludes dual use, dual purpose. Currently, right now, with our program guidelines, it does make a difference with our projects and how we fund them, and then also how we rank them. Through the Community Air Protection Incentives Program, which are tied to the Carl Moyer program, there is a difference in how the program is run, whether it's a private infrastructure project versus a public infrastructure project. So those are things that we also have to consider as well as when we're looking at the projects, and also something that we have to discuss with our partners as we move forward in deploying, and the cost share. Aside from cost share, though, I think that's one space that we do want to move into. And so currently we do have efforts with SMUD, with SAC-RT and the city, and other partner agencies in trying the most innovative way and the most cost-effective way to do dual charging. And so those are just things that, as we're learning the infrastructure world, we're trying to apply to see where the best locations would be for that type of fit. And then some locations will work, and then obviously some will not.
Okay, we have a speakers list here. I'm going to go with Board Member Daniels, Harris, and then Natoli. Board Member Daniels.
Thank you very much. I want to start out with full disclosure. Pepsi beats Coke in our house every single time. So I fully support public and private partnerships. I think they are actually usually the best way to go in solving problems. And I have a concern with this one in that the numbers, I'm seeing 6.5 million of, and I want to correct the doctor, and I understand your point in saying state dollars. These are tax dollars. These are tax dollars. And so 6.5 million on an 8.5 million project comes out to about 80% of the cost. And I have a problem with that. I think that to put out 20 vehicles, we're talking about over $300,000 subsidizing each vehicle. So I understand the point of moving in this direction. I'm just a little bit disappointed that in using these funds, and if it came out somewhere else, and I was a little bit late today, I apologize for that, but I don't know that we saw any other alternatives, and maybe there weren't other requests and stuff like that, but it just seems like spending so much money to impact 20 vehicles seems like it's not a proper use of taxpayer dollars. If Pepsi wanted to do this, I would say that's wonderful. You know, spend $8.5 million and I'll pay a little bit more for my Pepsi. But I have a concern about that from the tax dollars side. And I wanted to piggyback on Mr. Cerna and Mr. Notelli's remarks about the energy and whatnot. I think that is absolutely a requirement for this project, that we find a way to do that, and also find a way for whoever uses that resource, that money comes back to the Air Board. We're giving $6.5 million. It seems like we could figure out a way that if other people used this resource, that those dollars, whatever is earned on that, should find a way back to the Air Board.
Thank you, Board Member Harris.
To the gentleman from SMUD, I have a question about DC fast charge. So in the automotive space, a Tesla car can use level 2 chargers but can't access DC fast charge with a different charging standard because of the onboard equipment in the car. I'm wondering if that'll be the same with these trucks, and whether it'll be the equipment installed at Pepsico will be proprietary and not be usable for other equipment by other manufacturers.
I'm not actually familiar with the connector that Tesla is going to be proposing for this Pepsi project. We all know that the CCS1, the combo connector, is the standard across the industry. It's possible they'll be using that one, but since their technology is unique to, this project is unique just to the Pepsi property, it probably is not as applicable. However, as you know, Pepsi invented their own connector, which all other vehicles cannot connect to. So they created a third wave, not counting China and Europe, some of the other connector configurations, but they created their own third wave of connector, which none of the other vehicles can connect to. So they had created a disruption of their own within the industry, and I'm sure you're familiar with that. I think you can buy an adapter for your Tesla that allows you to charge off all of the SAE J1772 connectors that are publicly available, right? Costs
Level 2, yes, but DC fast charge, no.
Right. So, we're just kind of stuck there because Tesla kind of went its own, instead of joining with the rest of the car companies and the industry, Tesla kind of went its own way. We had no control over that, which is fine. In a proprietary setting, it's not an issue. In a public setting, it becomes a bigger issue, right?
Exactly.
Board Member Harris, did you care to ask Pepsi to respond to that, or did that suffice your question?
Yeah, why don't you come up? It looks like you have something to add.
So as Dwight mentioned, up to 350 kilowatts, there are the standardized SAE, CCS Type 1, Type 2 chargers. But the transport tractors that we're talking about, it's being called the mega charger. Do not know, it's a 700, it's a 1,000 kilowatt charger. But within the automotive world, there's a new consortium called Charin. That's where the Teslas, the Daimlers, the Volvos, they're all getting together to come up with this high power connector. We do not know what these initial ones would be, but that consortium is meeting on a regular basis, and we believe they're close to a standard across all these high power requirements, because these could be almost 1,000 kilowatts compared to the cars, which are 10 kilowatts in most cases.
Well, that would be a great development and certainly create a lot more facility, for different kinds of vehicles to be charged.
Sure.
So, we'll keep our eye on the industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Natoli.
Yeah, just very quickly, I want to certainly thank our staff and certainly the SMUD and Pepsi representatives and RT as well for, I think they filled in even some of the gaps and some of the questions I had posed earlier. But if I could just offer one distinction here, it seems to me that, there may be, and Jaime, I think you kind of spoke to it, different pathways here. It's not just about dual charging, public access and, in this case, PepsiCo, but that you the fleet mix. And so if you have some smaller, and I appreciate that Dwight mentioned, Mission and Bimbo out there as well, that, maybe they do a much slower conversion. They bring one truck on, but, for them to have then a charging station on site and so forth might become difficult, to front the cost for. So in the case of at least industries that may have similar fleet mixes and or at least, comparative vehicles relative to long and short haul and deliveries and so forth, it would seem to me that's where, in looking at the agreements, it might be different than what Director Cerna talked about, where you have the dual station or, where general public can come in, truck, car, whatever. But that, within an industrial setting, that for some of the smaller fleets that are maybe slower conversions to electrification, that would make sense that then the agreement could provide for that, again, with relative security and agreements and so forth regarding liability and such. And so that's, I like the idea that you're going to take a look at those, and it seems to me we're kind of on the cutting edge here, but we can learn from others as well. So thanks for the information.
Thank you, Board Member Natoli, and I think these are great questions and why the reason I asked our pollution control officer in the mid-year, let's pull all of this together. We've been seeing, aggressively, our staff has gone out to get resources, to bring resources and deliver them here to our region. And I know it's always a challenge competing against other areas of the state, but in the mid-year, I think these are questions about how do we grow our infrastructure, increase acceptability, and where are the areas of opportunity. I also think that this is I support this grant. I think the point that both Director Natoli and Cerna and Daniels brought up about the need to make sure that as our agreements move forward, that we can do that. Now, I get that there may be state restrictions on these dollars, so if we can't access them because the state restricts them and we become too narrow, then 0 of 0 is still 0. So I want to make sure that we're in the middle of making sure we're addressing how do we maximize our resources, but also be more prudent with them. So With that, there are no other members signed up to speak. We do need an action on this to authorize the Executive Director, Air Pollution Control Officer to execute the funding agreements. So I'll bring it back to the board here. Is there a motion from the board? It's been moved by Board Member Terry. It's been seconded by Board Member Kennedy. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, measure passes. Thank you, everyone, for that, and you guys got some work ahead of you. So, and thank you again to our partners, RT, Pepsico, and for participating in this. Madam Clerk.
The next item, item number 6, greenhouse gas thresholds of significance information update, and I have Paul Philly here to give a presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Philly.
Good morning, Chair Guerra, members of the board. Since we're already short on time, I'm going to shorten the presentation. If it's a little too much, please let me know.
That would be helpful, since we also have a budget committee after this.
So we're all aware that part of our chief jobs here as air quality planners is to mediate between the aspirations of California and the realities of the Central Valley. And an aspiration of California to get down to carbon stability and low carbon has become a mandate. All of you are dealing with this at your local jurisdictions, but you also have the realities of your local jurisdictions. We were a growing region, we have a housing crisis, we need to bring projects forward. All of these projects have to go through the environmental review process, and we want to make sure that that process is as flexible to each individual jurisdiction and developer, as well as making sure that we meet the mandates put upon us by the state of California. There's a new scoping plan, there's new case law telling us how to do this, and so we've been working, last time I came to you was 6 months ago in August, and I wanted to report on the progress of the new thresholds that will help facilitate that. There are two general ways that a project can satisfy the greenhouse gas reduction requirements. One is by being in a jurisdiction with a qualified climate action plan, and the other is to do project-by-project review of the individual project and its overall impact. For those of you who have done the climate action plan, it's very similar to a SIP. You look at your inventory, you look at all the different emitting sectors, and then you come up with how much each sector is going to change, how that's going to happen, how that's going to be implemented. And that's why all of the new development checklists for the project jurisdictions with climate action plans are a little bit different. They made a community decision about how much was going to come from new growth as opposed to how much comes from the existing development and how much is going to come from county operations and so on and so forth. For those without a climate action plan, the Air District doesn't have plenary or land use authority, so we can only look at the new growth sector, and that's why the checklist I'm bringing before you is going to be a little bit different than, say, the city of Sacramento or the city of Elk Groves. So again, if you're a developer, you either have to be consistent with a qualified cap, and then you don't have to worry about greenhouse gas reductions, or you have to be CEQA exempt. If you're exempt from CEQA, you don't have to worry about this. But if you are in an environmental process, this is something where you have to come up with a threshold, see if you're significant, incorporate measures, and reduce. So this is where the region is today. Half the people on this dais represent jurisdictions that have climate action plans and half do not. The one exception is Director Lampson, who will be looking at their climate action plan in March 3rd, I want to say. Yeah. And so for those of you in the green box, this isn't meaning to say that this isn't for you or we don't support you. Galt's climate action planning process actually started with the referral of a CEC grant from the Air District to your planning director. You guys want it. We had a Civic Spark fellow research a bunch of other small valley towns with climate action plans to give a wide breadth of options, and then you went to your youth commission and your planning commission, and we're very excited that it's moved forward. For jurisdictions that have not yet done this or choose not to do this, this will be more impactful to you. So,
Mr. Philly, before you move on to this slide, we have Board Member Kennedy here.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed that the County of Sacramento is not in the or in progress, but we are.
When is your date for, forgive me, my understanding is from staff is that you guys have stopped your climate action planning process.
I'm sorry, what?
That you have stopped work on your climate action plan. It's still continuing?
No, we're working on our action plan. I mean, Supervisor Cerna and I had a meeting with staff just 3 days ago.
Okay.
So
Just had 3 supervisors say that they're still working on it.
yeah, no, it's well underway.
Fair enough.
I wager that's more than a majority.
Thank you.
No, we are aware that it's moving forward, but most likely these thresholds will be adopted before you adopt your climate action plan.
Okay, then I would rephrase the in progress, because we are definitely in progress. There's
My
no way you
apologies.
can say-
Just
okay.
Director Lampson's is going to happen prior to our adoption.
Thank you.
So these are what the thresholds, as you remember from August, look like. The natural gas reductions, currently there is no inventory left in 2030 for additional natural gas from new growth projects, and so any new project would have to either have no natural gas or mitigate the natural gas that they do use, as well as build the building in a manner where it's pre-wired so it can be converted to all-electric operation in the future. And then the second one is recently the SACOG board adopted an MTP SCS consistent with their SB 375 light-duty emission reduction targets, and a piece of that included the adoption of light-duty vehicles at a rate faster than the state of California. And because that's how SACOG's doing it, we need to make sure that projects have EVSE, charging equipment adoption, higher than Title 24. So if we're having more electric cars running around than the state is anticipating, there has to be additional infrastructure to support that. That would be applicable to all projects, and then larger and efficient projects not next to transit or over 1,100 metric tons or a few other pieces, would also have to be consistent with your SB 743 processes. For those jurisdictions who have not yet done so but are planning to do so, we have worked with SACOG to develop a countywide VMT metric, which is 15% below the county's VMT, either residential or worker, or no net increase for retail VMT. And then once the local jurisdiction adopts a 743 process, the threshold would defer to the local decision. With respect to BMP4, which I brought back in August, it is determined that it was not necessary for it to be as part of the best management practices. The technology is not quite ready for prime time. SMUD does have a pilot, but we don't feel that it's feasible, and the state is moving forward with regulations that we feel is going to take care of this sector. So we're recommending that you not adopt it at this time. One thing that did come out of outreach to your planning staffs was the possibility of having a local offset program. When you have thresholds, sometimes a project can't meet it, and so they want to do an offsite program. And the current way it's done is you would go to a A or B exchange and go buy a project overseas to mitigate the project. And because it's a global issue, you have a global nexus. It's low cost, it's available, it's defensible, it's what we do now. We do have an option to develop a local program. We just spent the first hour of this meeting talk about local emission reduction programs. But I will say that if we were to develop a off-site local greenhouse gas program, it's probably going to be more expensive. The first thing we'd have to do is to create the substantial evidence in the math to figure out what it would be, and things in Northern California typically cost more than things overseas. And so we could look at a project cost 2 to 3 times more for the reductions than it would be if it went through an exchange. The last thing I'd want to do is to spend time and resources developing a program, and then when you're back at your home jurisdictions approving projects, and a developer says, I'd rather do this one that's a third of the cost, there's no point in developing a program if it's not going to be used by the local jurisdictions. So we're not asking for a decision today, well, except from the county since they have a quorum. But what we would ask is for direction next month as to whether or not you would like us to pursue creating an off-site mitigation program. So do we want it to be a low-cost offsets, or do we want local offsets? Is sort of the binary choice I'm going to ask you to give us. And then finally, like all good CEQA documents, there has to be a whole bunch of paperwork. And the last one is a qualitative discussion of standards and requirements beyond 2030. And so there are still environmental impacts even after we hit the 2030 target. So you'd want to discuss how your project won't impede, for instance, SMUD's 2040 net zero plan, or how you would make sure that there's available capacity for 100% zero emission fleet. So point to a fuel cell plan or a EV plan or something along those lines. And so that would just be a qualitative discussion to show that the project would be consistent with or could become consistent easily with the scoping plan as we move forward. We did lots of outreach. We spoke to the North State Building Industry Association twice, and we did do special outreach to the 3 jurisdictions plus 1 who are currently will not have climate action plans developed by adoption of this threshold, assuming this board does adopt, which, of course, the choice is yours. Next steps at this point would be we are working with our consultants, Ramble, Sherry Labicki, and Shana Ulysses have been wonderful, and we're getting wonderful, wonderful comments from your staffs, the consulting industry, the building industry, to make sure that the substantial evidence is there, the flexibility is there, and then we would ask to bring back a resolution for this board to adopt next month.
Thank you very much. Board Member Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. So with the available capacity on that previous slide, Paul, or 2 slides back, for 100% zero emission vehicle fleet, and all the stated goals for targets, I'm looking to 2040, 2030, 2045, but this calculation about VMT, right now, obviously, it's a much more critical factor because you have fossil fuel fleet is the major makeup of that. But is there some projection that over time that if goals are achieved and you get closer to 100% ZEV, that the VMT doesn't become as critical? Because at that point in time, if you have non-polluting vehicles, obviously you still have energy usage, but then whether you go 1 mile or 100 miles, you're not, there's nothing coming out the tailpipe. So what sort of projections, I guess, over time, because there's all this focus on VMT, I mean, it's the driver, I get it for now, but over time that would become less critical because your fleet's going to change out with all the incentives and so forth. So I guess I'm just curious as to how that gets factoring into to some of these calculations over time. Maybe Alberto or Paul, you could.
So right now, that's actually a very spirited discussion between the California Transportation Commission and the Air Resources Board.
Okay.
The Air Resources Board feels that VMT reductions are more critical because there's still energy in producing the car as well as driving the car. And also, they're looking at land change and land use change. So typically, high VMT communities have less people living per more stuff. And so you'll have more roads, more pavement, more loss of open space. And the change in natural lands to built environment does have a carbon impact. Also, communities with larger VMT typically have larger houses and larger lawns, which also leads to additional greenhouse gases. So
it goes to a much deeper discussion about lifestyles, about living arrangements, and it's not just what comes out the tailpipe. That's
right. I've got a tight hour 18 I can give you on this, but we're probably...
No, that's fine. Okay, good enough. I appreciate that. Enough for today. Thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'll have to remember that you wanted it. Okay, there are no other questions from the board here or comments. I think what I'd encourage is our board members to, as they think about this and they go back to their cities, to just give our air district staff some feedback on this. I think that would help our air district staff as they do their outreach. With that, since there's nothing else, Madam Clerk, anybody signed up for public comment?
No, there's not.
Okay, I think that concludes our, if there are no AB 1, 2, 3, 4 reports or board ideas and comments or announcements, then we are adjourned for today and we will go to the Budget Committee. Thank you, everyone.
I'm just going to get